I literally just got a call that one of our radiators at one of our properties exploded before we bought the property, which means the old owner knew about it and didn't tell us. And then the tenant had to go find a hotel room and spent over $500 of their own money that the landlord did not reimburse her for. This sounds like a wild story. I literally just got this phone call. Hey, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Joe Hardy, the Hardy Investor. I have 72 units of investment property that makes over $15,000 monthly cash flow and worth almost $6 million in value. And I'm here to teach you guys how you can build a cash flow and real estate portfolio while working your 9-to-5 jobs. I still work my 9-to-5 and manage all of this. There's ways you can put systems in place and you can leverage your time and money so that you can build these businesses in the 5 to 9 time period. So 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. while you're working your 9-to-5. Maybe you're not working a 9-to-5 and you still want to do this anyway. Let's build cash flow together. So let's talk more about this. We just closed on a 4-unit. We had planned on rehabbing it. We bought it for $123,000. We were going to put about $35,000 to $40,000 of rehab into it. This would include a new roof, gutters, painting the exterior completely, new windows, about 12 of the windows needed replaced, and then the interior, pretty much a full cosmetic renovation, including paint, flooring, some trim work, and then there's some minor things here and there, nothing major other than what I just mentioned. So it's going to be all in all about 35 to 40 all in for rehab. So we'd be all into this property for about 160, and when we were done, the ARV after repair value would be $160,000. So we bought the property, we got it under contract about a month ago, just closed on it Friday, January 6th. We got a fix and flip loan from myinvestorloan.com. Highly recommend them. I don't get any kind of money for mentioning them. They're not a sponsor, but we had a really good experience with them. In fact, there's a guy named Derek over there I'd be happy to set you guys up with if you want to know. But we only had to come into the deal for 15% of all that out of pocket. So that was all in all, I think it ended up being about $30,000 out of our pocket for this property that's going to be worth $200,000 when we're done. And if all goes well, we'll refinance, we'll get our money back to pay off the fix and flip loan, and we might even get to put some in our pocket and we'll have a cash flowing property. So that's kind of how that works. Now let's talk about some of the more details so you guys can know the ins and outs of being a real estate investor. I don't want to just tell you the good stuff and make it sound easy. I want to give you the real information so you know what it's really like. And you know that it's not easy, because I think sometimes that can be just as encouraging too, because you start investing or looking at investing and it's hard and you're like, well, everybody else makes this look easy. Why is it so hard for me? It's not really easy for everybody. Sometimes it's just the way they make it look, or maybe they've built up to the point where now they've hired out of staff and some things are easier for them. So the call I just got, again, we closed January 6th, Christmas Eve. There was a big freeze that came through the United States. If you guys remember that, wasn't that long ago. So a lot of frozen pipes. This tenant's radiator burst. And so a radiator is heat that is through hot water, steam. Not very many of our properties have this, but this property does. Her radiator burst. She tried to get over her landlord, couldn't. Ended up calling the fire department to shut the water off because her apartment was flooding. Because unfortunately, when it comes to a radiator with water moving through the system, frozen pipes means your heating system could have water flooding. Now your heat's not working and there's water coming into your unit, which sounds terrible. She ended up taking her and her kids, her family, to a hotel room, paying like probably $500 in expenses just to get out and get into a livable place. And the landlord took care of none of this. And by the way, have I failed to mention yet that the landlord did not tell us any of this was going on? We had to wait until we closed on the property and we called the tenants and said, hey, we're your new landlord. And this tenant said, oh, by the way, did you know about this? Nope, absolutely not. We had no clue. So the person who sold this property, this is a lesson for you guys. If anything like this happens to you, we didn't own the property at the time. So we are technically not liable for any of this damage. When we walked through the property, it was early December. We did not see any of this damage when we walked through the property because it hadn't happened yet. But when it did happen, previous owner never made us aware, never brought it to anybody's attention, never mentioned it to anybody in the transaction who would be important to mention it to. It was something he did not disclose. It'd be like he didn't put something on his initial disclosure list, which he didn't have anything on the disclosure list when we first bought the property. So we knew anything that came up was going to be something that he didn't disclose because he didn't put anything down. But this happened in the middle of the transaction, which you're still supposed to disclose. Anything that happens in the property between inspection and closing is still the responsibility of the seller. So ultimately, he's responsible for this damage. So we'll see if he pays up, or if we have to, we did buy this one with a realtor, we have to get the realtors involved, or if we ultimately have to get our lawyer involved and take him to court. It's just part of investing. I will say we've bought probably 25 to 30 properties at this point, and this is the first time this has ever happened. So the chances of this happening are pretty low, so don't not get into real estate investing because of this. I'm not trying to scare you away. I'm just trying to give you the reality of something that you might face and have to deal with. And you know what? It's not a big deal. It did not stress me out at all when I heard about it. It's just something to deal with that you can deal with. In fact, we had already budgeted for rehab, so most of the stuff was probably going to get replaced anyway. I think mostly it was flooring that was damaged. We were going to replace all the floors anyway. So the fact that we were going to rehab this place anyway. And now actually we might not have to come out of all of our pocket, or, you know, the rehab loan pocket to do the rehab. We might get the seller to now pay for some of this because it's damage that he didn't make us aware of. You know, it might even work out to our favor in the end. So it's just another thing to be aware of. Again, very low chance of this happening. You know, what I would recommend, what we should have done, we used to do final walkthroughs of all of our properties. When we first got into investing, and this is one way you can mitigate your risk on things like this when you're first getting started, we would walk through every one of our properties the day before closing. Now, we got out of the habit of doing this because the reality is we never really found anything through all those walkthroughs. We mostly are dealing with sellers with integrity, and the chances of something happening to your property in, you know, the last 2 weeks of a transaction are really low. But you should do a final walkthrough so that you can see if something is different from the first time you walk through to when you actually close on the property. So that's something we could have done to have avoided this, you know, potentially. But what would we have found? Would we have decided to not close? Probably not. We would still close on the property. So the fact that we found out now really doesn't change anything, except it might be a little bit harder. You know, previously we might have been able to get the title company to hold back funds. Now the funds have been released to the seller, so it might be a little bit harder to go get our money. So that's it on that property. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to private message me. I'm happy to take you through more of that transaction, how we found it, more details about what we're going to do with it. But like I said, we're going to be all in for 160, and even after we refinance a new long-term loan at 160, even with high interest rates, which hopefully those go down soon, but even with, you know, conservative numbers on the interest rates, we're still going to be cash flowing about $1,000 a month. So we're really excited about this property.